Booth with Bryce Kuhn.
Happy Wednesday, everyone. We're excited to have you once again on the Crowded Booth Live. Bryce Kuhn alongside Ralph Leary. If you were with us on Monday, we're looking a little bit different. We're live on my Twitter feed, trying to shake things up a little bit. Most notably, Ralph, because we were having some trouble with Twitter. Last night for our Swarm Talk show, I see we already have some viewers on my Twitter, but it's not going to show up here on this page. So if you want to comment, you want to be a part of the show, what we need you to do is we need you to take and go over to our YouTube. There you can comment, like, and subscribe as well. Make sure we're at 149. We need 150. We need some type of contest to get us there. Let's see what we can do. Indeed, we'll have to talk about that off air.
First person to subscribe right now, I will Venmo you $1.
All right. You've heard it right now. If you subscribe to the YouTube right now, and I will see under our Crowded Booth email notifications after the show's over, the next person to subscribe will be Venmo'd $1. Wow, that's big time money right there. You got to love that.
I got paid finally last week.
There you go. Nice. No, we're excited. We're excited to bring an action-packed show. We're going to have a special guest to talk. We're going to dive straight into some good conversation. Ralph, we've got a great show talking about really the three big local teams in this area. And no, it's not the folks down in Tallahassee. It's Alabama, Auburn, and Georgia. It's going to be a fun time to talk about that. But first off, I want to see if you're following us on social media as well. We need you to follow us on Instagram at The Crowded Booth, Twitter at The Crowded Booth, and Facebook. We're live right now on Facebook as well. Like we said earlier, make sure to like, subscribe, set up those notifications on YouTube. Also, check us out for our podcast platform on Anchor. We're going to be releasing episodes there. As Ralph, we're going to take an in-depth look at Ole Miss and Alabama this upcoming week. We're excited for that one as well. Ralph, first off, man, how you doing?
Doing great, man. It's been a great day. Very relaxing day, honestly, and the weather's been pretty good this week, honestly.
The weather's been good, and that's a good thing, Ralph. I'll say this. You were a little nervous last night because of the Braves' narrow win. Right now they're leading 2-1 in the bottom of the second inning. So we'll have to keep tabs on that throughout the show. Braves in the race for the playoffs. Once again, I see our viewers are going up on Twitter. If you're watching over on Twitter as we talk college football tonight, make sure to head over to YouTube so you can be a part of the show. We want to hear from you, the fans. Ralph, let's dive right in now. I want to talk about this Auburn quarterback situation. It's something that's very interesting. It's something that I think people are having a lot of conversation about, but I think it begs differ that it might be overblown a little bit. So we're going to roll with this in your opinion. In your opinion, and we're going to have an expert opinion come on in about 15 minutes to talk about Zach McKinnell of Fly War Eagle. Who are you putting in the starting quarterback in the depth chart on Saturday against LSU in Death Valley if you're Brian Harsin, Mike Bobo, and the staff?
I think you roll with Bo at first, honestly. I think Bo's a guy who's been there all year. Obviously had a rough Saturday last weekend. I was there. I witnessed it. It was rough, but Bo's your leader. I mean, he's your captain, honestly, on your offense. He's been there this is his third year now. Nothing against Finley. Obviously, he just transferred in this year. He's still kind of getting to know these guys still. Obviously, he's had all summer, but this is a really, really rough, go at it going back to your home stadium where you played last year for this team. A lot of good friends you have over there, and probably guys who don't like you as much. And you got to go. You're going to start your first game as an Auburn Tiger in LSU against your former team. That's a lot. That's a lot going on in his head. So I think Bo Nix starts the game off at quarterback. I don't see why you wouldn't. Just because of Bo's just the poise he has, honestly, with this team, and they trust him. Obviously, I mean they do because if he wasn't starting, I mean, or if they had problems with him starting, they would be saying things. They would be upset about a certain amount of things, but they trust him. They trust Harsin. I think they're going to roll a Bo on Saturday. And if things go wrong, you have a great quarterback to back up at TJ Finley.
You do, and I like that. I like what you said about TJ Finley. You have Finley there. You saw what he was capable of and what he can do against Georgia State on Saturday. And like we said, too, I mean, listen, Bo Nix, I mean, this is not completely Bo Nix's fault. Someone in that wide receiver room has to step up and say, I'm going to be the guy that's going to help this group out. Kobe Hudson, Demetrius Robertson, which far too often in a Georgia uniform, Demetrius Robertson, Ralph, would just disappear. We saw that this past Saturday. It's going to take somebody, as Hunter Morrison has now joined the show. Hunter, we appreciate you watching over on Twitter. Somebody in the Auburn wide receiver room is going to have to step up. This offensive line is going to have to play better. Ralph, even against Penn State, we talked about Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter and these guys that they have. I'm here to tell you that Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter created a lot of space with their initial cuts that were behind the line of scrimmage, what they were having to do. So I don't want to hear this necessarily of the offensive line play better. No, they haven't. The offensive line's got to step up, and somebody in the wide receiver room is going to have to figure out how to catch the football. Yeah. Back to your point about Bo Nix, he gets happy feet. We talked about this at lunch today at one of the big places in Columbus that I really want to be our sponsor. Great food. But and until they sponsor us, I'm not going to say where we went, Nate. I want to say
no free advertisement.
No free advertising here. Crowded booth, Cook's Place Hot Dogs, Section 103. They get all the advertisement they want. With Bo Nix in this situation, okay, he feels like he has to do a lot with a little at sometimes, with really situations that are not favorable for him getting the ball. I think he's a tremendous athlete. I think he has the ability and potential there to be good. But we were sitting in our booth today, no pun intended, and the guy behind us was talking about he's had 2.5 years. You know, the fabled Auburn, he's got 2.5 dang years. Okay, but with what team? It's in all seriousness. I mean,
and a COVID year last year. Please introduce that there was a COVID year last year. And some of these guys didn't get a full spring. They didn't get work receivers. Mm-hmm. And honestly, some of the guys didn't even play last year because they didn't want to play during COVID, which is nothing against those guys. But you got to be, they have their own reasons.
They have their own reasons. And I like what you said there because, they have their own reasons. Sorry, a glitch right there for a second. But you have to sit there and tell yourself, listen, this is a team in Auburn that has all the ability to be successful this year. Now, does that look like a national title? No. Does it look like a college football playoff? Does it look like a New Year's Six? I don't think so. It could be at their best, maybe, if they play above their ability. But this is a team that's set for a quality Florida Bowl, the Outback Bowl we talked about, and an 8-4 season if all the chips fall right. We talked about that. This team at their best right now, in my opinion, can go 8-4 in the regular season, 2 losses to Georgia and Alabama, who most believe are far and away the top 2 teams in the country. But they've got to figure out this quarterback situation, and it has to start Saturday night in Baton Rouge. I'm with you. You start Bo Nix, and we're going to have Zach McKinnell. He's going to talk to us a little bit later. You're going to have to start him as Grant Collin right there with the sick face. He didn't like that. You have to start Bo Nix, in my opinion, and go to TJ Finley. Because, Ralph, who is the best? Who's the fan favorite in a stadium? Who's the most favorite player? It's the backup quarterback. Always. You better be careful what you wish for. You better be careful what you wish for because it's not that I almost said Jamichael Finley. I don't know where I got that from. Jamarcus Russell, I almost thought of for a second.
Oh, boy.
When it's TJ Finley in this situation, you better be careful what you wish for because there's a reason he had to transfer out and he lost the job. Not because he's an inept at quarterback. He's talented. He's got his things, but Bo Nix has got to be your guy in this situation. 2, on a second level, schematically, I think we need to throw out this whole Bo Nix is going to be a pro passer and we are going to fit him into this mold. He's not a pro-style quarterback. No. And that's okay. That's fine. NFL's shifting. The college football landscape's shifting. So in my opinion, Ralph, you roll with Bo Nix, but Bo Nix, you need to stop trying to act like he's this prototype NFL quarterback that's going to be he's not a Matt Ryan. He's not a Peyton Manning. He's not going to be a statue in the quarterback. Let him play to his strengths, which you said today, he is a runner, but he's got a cannon. he needs the protection, and he also needs the ability of his receivers to haul in some of those passes.
I mean, yeah, Bo's going to do what Bo can do best. And that's what they got to let him do. Obviously, Gus didn't let him have that freedom last year. We saw it more of in freshman year, which was surprising because he was a freshman. You would think he'd be held back, but he was able to do a lot more things with his feet and throw the ball on the run, which he was really good at. And this past year is more like sit in the pocket as long as you can, then have to scramble and run for your life. This year, it's more like get the pass off. If you can't, try to get the pass off again. You got to let him be mobile. And, he is very athletic. I mean, he's one of those athletic quarterbacks in the SEC. I'm saying that because obviously there's Bryce Young, who's just really talented. Matt Corral is also really good on his feet. But Bo Nix can do a lot of things, and he's got the knowledge. This is his third year in the SEC. Most quarterbacks, Bryce Young, he's in his first year technically starting for the SEC. JT Daniels played 4 games last year in the SEC. Don't get me wrong. He's a great quarterback, play a lot in Pac-12. Did some great things over there his freshman year. This is SEC football. It's a lot different. All he's really faced, honestly, Bryce, and I say this, the only team he's actually really faced this year is Clemson. And his whole career, honestly, is that Clemson is his hardest team. But for Bo, he's faced Alabama twice, Georgia twice, LSU twice, Arkansas twice, and Ole Miss twice. He's faced some of the best teams in the country twice already. This is his third year. He's not afraid of anything. And he said that in the beginning. And I want to say it was was it the news? The media day.
Yeah.
Auburn, we're not afraid of anyone. And he's not because he's been here. So let Bo go do what Bo can do best on Saturday. Let him a little more freedom with him. Let him run the ball more. Let him get comfortable again, because that's what he was the first 2 games. Obviously, they didn't really play anyone, but he was comfortable back there. He was able to do throw the ball, run when he needed to, and make plays. And that's what Bo is really good at doing, is making plays.
He's good at making plays. He's a playmaker. He has that innate ability to do that. That's a reason, Ralph, he was highly recruited coming out of high school. You and I were talking about, we got kind of farther into the conversation, which it may happen this season. Sometimes these quarterbacks don't pan out, Ralph. But to me, the idea, and this is also an opportunity, Bo Nix on the road. Oh, gosh, here we go. Well, listen, Death Valley is a tough place to play. The SEC West is the toughest place to play. The comment right there, SEC is overrated. UGA and Bama, the only 2 elite teams in the conference. The second half of your comment is correct in that the UGA and Bama are the only 2 elite teams. I'll give you that one. They're probably the only 2 elite teams right now in college football.
Arkansas,
the SEC,
Ole Miss.
It's okay. It's okay. They'll see more.
I want to say one more thing though. Throw it back to what we were talking about Death Valley being a tough place to play. Auburn hasn't won since 1999. Sorry. Last time Auburn played there was in 2019 against the national champion Joe Burrow LSU Tigers, and Auburn lost by 3.
Yeah. Obviously, albeit with a dominant defense.
With one of the best defenses Auburn's ever seen, I'll hand that down. But this is a lot less of a team that LSU has this year than compared to that team. So 9 o'clock kickoff for Eastern for us here in Columbus, 8 o'clock for people in Auburn. It's going to be a great game in Death Valley. So
it's going to be a great game, and a man who has been watching a lot of Auburn football is going to come on now. Mr. Zach McKinnell. Zach, we see you. It's a little bit congested, so we're going to bring it here like this to see the full extent of Zach McKinnell. And listen, this is an interesting topic of conversation we're opening up with here. Obviously, there are 2 massive games in this conference that are on tap. And I don't think you could say otherwise. What Arkansas and Georgia have happening in Athens, Ole Miss and Alabama meeting up with Lane Kiffin trying to become the first assistant out of the tree to beat them. It's going to be an exciting day. And that 9 p.m. Eastern time slot, I think it's 8 p.m. Central for you. Who's starting? And maybe yours is different. We both said Bo Nix in this situation. I know the depth chart came out Bo Nix, but it doesn't mean a ton. Who for you is starting in this matchup if you are the coach?
So Bo Nix will start. TJ Finley should start. And here's why. I'll give y'all this thing. So there's this narrative. So in the Auburn circles that I've been talking to that says if TJ Finley was better than Bo Nix, he wouldn't have had to leave LSU. And for me, being a lifelong Auburn fan covering this team, that's a real strong take for a fan base who their 2 best quarterbacks at all time were transfer quarterbacks. And Cam Newton and Nick Marshall potentially. And Nick Marshall wasn't even a quarterback when he transferred. So it's a real weird take to say that just because a kid transferred, it means he couldn't compete elsewhere. Because when you look at the history of quarterbacks, that would mean that almost every Oklahoma quarterback for the past 5 years wasn't good enough elsewhere, and that Joe Burrow, arguably the best quarterback maybe in college football history in that 2019 season, wasn't good enough to compete at Ohio State. There's other factors that play a role in who starts at schools other than are you good enough just to compete? And for me, the number one thing for Bo Nix is the road struggles. We've seen it over and over and over again. And the problem with Auburn isn't necessarily the quarterback. It's with the offensive line and their pass blocking. Austin Troxell at the tackle spot has been one of the lowest graded pass blockers in the country. I believe his grade's like a 30 in terms of Pro Football Focus's pass blocking grade. And when you look at the advanced analytics from last week, even though it's a small sample size, for the season, Bo Nix, his passing grade under pressure is like a 32. And that's where all his turnovers have come. That's where all his struggles have come. TJ Finley last week had a higher grade under pressure than he did not. The number one thing that separates TJ Finley from Bo Nix for me is his ability to stay calm in the pocket. Even when you go back and watch the film from Auburn LSU in 2019, you can see TJ Finley was not rattled in the pocket, even though Auburn was teeing off on him because that LSU offense was atrocious. For me, nobody this weekend is going to be more motivated to win this football game and put on a show than TJ Finley. And really and truly, outside that Auburn game, he played pretty well for LSU, I would say. And he has a big arm. I'd say his arm's stronger than Nick's is. The only thing people mix up is he doesn't have the athleticism outside the pocket because he's a bigger guy. But for me, what you want if you're Auburn is you want that energy that you saw in the second half against Georgia State last week. And for me, you bench Bo Nix and you bring in Finley. He leads the scoring drive. What are you telling your team if you're Harsin by putting Nix right back out there? Because I promise you there's some people in the locker room who are wondering if Nix starts, do they really have a shot to win this game?
Yeah. I mean, we made points for why Nick should start. You made points for why Finley should, and I think it could go either way, really. I mean, this is something where you talked about the locker room chemistry, and I want to reference it to the podcast, the Locked On Auburn podcast. I think Chandler Wooten went on, I think it was today or yesterday, and talked about what he has seen since the start of camp when Finley came in. Ralph and I were talking about this over lunch today. Do you see a situation, we won't go too far down the road, where let's say what happens. Let's say they start Bo Nix. And, you know, I don't think that this LSU team is talented enough to necessarily run away with a game against Auburn. Auburn would have to shoot themselves in the foot. But let's say that it's just a pedestrian, let's say 17-10 at halftime, Auburn's down, and the offense is just not inspiring. They throw Finley out there in the second half. Finley leads them to a comeback win. This schedule for Auburn doesn't get any easier, and Finley continues to do what he needs to do. It's seemingly, with Wooten's comments on the Locked On Auburn podcast, talking about the poise he had in the pocket, like you said, there's already maybe some contingency that thinks he is the option right now to go to.
I think if you don't start him this weekend, I fear Harsin loses the locker room. You already have a questionable call by throwing the wide receiving coach in the garbage can after 4 games when he's coaching a wide receiving group that returned 0 starters from last year, and nobody on that roster had more than 100 yards receiving in their career coming into the season. And your best wide receiver was a Georgia transfer who didn't even get on campus till like middle of summer. So how are we firing the wide receiving coach for doing his best with a unit that was underutilized anyway? And you fire him when we had 2 wide receiving commits in this class already. They've come out, the head coaches said they haven't even had a conversation with Brian Harsin. The only communication our 2 wide receiving commits had was with the wide receiving coach. And then it makes it look worse that you replace them with your best friend from Boise State. So it looks like a little bit of home cooking already. And so what are you telling the locker room? You've already lost the alumni. Sammy Coates went on like a whole rant on social media about how Harsin lost the thing. There's reporters left and right putting him on the hot seat. I understand you want to change the culture, but firing your wide receiving coach, who is arguably your best offensive recruiter, is not the way to do it. And then you're going to start Nix over Finley after he came in the game and probably, I don't think Brian Harsin was ready for what was going to happen if they lost to Georgia State last weekend. He was going to experience the full wrath of the SEC and Auburn media. They were going to crucify him at every turn, and TJ Finley saved him on that last drive. So for me, I think if he starts Nix this weekend, he loses the locker room. And if Auburn goes out there, and Derek Stingley's not playing for LSU, so that's a huge plus on Auburn's side because that's their best corner, and that's almost a generational talent sitting out. So that's a huge difference. But they still got 5-star Eli Ricks. Cordell Flott has been playing lights out the corner spot, and Georgia transfer Major Burns. I've been talking to one of the guys we know that's plugged into LSU. They're talking about moving Major Burns from safety to corner for this game potentially. So he's a legit player from Georgia who is a very talented kid. If Nix goes out there and has another road performance, which, guys, I'm going to be honest with you, if they start Nix, Auburn's losing this game, in my opinion. Even as an Auburn guy who covers the team, hardcore fan, alumni of the school, we're losing if Nix goes out there. If he has a bad game and we lose, Harsin loses the locker room, in my opinion, completely.
Look, Zach, I know we've talked a lot about Finley and Nix and Auburn offense this week, but what's Auburn's defense got to do to stop LSU? Obviously, Johnson has been really good this year. They throw a lot more than they did last year. I feel like they're more like we used to see LSU run the ball very well with great running backs, but he's already thrown for almost 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. What's Auburn's secondary, and especially the D line's got to get after this week, right?
Yeah, the secondary outside of Roger McCreary has been just atrocious. Well, him and Kaufman. Kaufman at safety, I think, has been an underrated addition, and he's been doing what he can, but at 5'9", 5'10", like, it's only so much you can ask from him. Yeah. Smoke Monday has been atrocious. I don't even know how he still has a starting spot at safety. He has been god-awful. Nehemiah Pritchett's still young, and he's coming along. But we just don't – Auburn doesn't have the depth at corner that they're used to having. Now, last week's defensive rushing performance, I'm chalking it up to Zacoby McClain not being in the game till the second half due to the awful targeting call at Penn State. You also had Owen Papo not playing last weekend, who you guys know, covering Georgia high school sports, is a stud. Owen Papo makes a difference in everything, in pass coverage, in running ability. He'll be back this week. So I think Auburn's front seven will be a lot more equipped. And the number one thing that helps Auburn, LSU can't run the ball lit. I mean,
they were 23 for 67 against Mississippi State. I mean, that's terrible. That's not the LSU we've seen in recent years.
Exactly. So that helps them out. They're going to be one-dimensional. Now it's going to be up to, can the safeties cover the slot receivers and things like that? McCreary's going to shut down the side of the field. We got you. But what they struggled with at Penn State was Jahan Dotson was moved to the slot, and he just picked apart the safeties and linebackers. That was the exact thing I said on our preview was going to happen, and they did it. If they can't stop the mid-range pass, Auburn's in trouble. That's why for this weekend, if Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter don't have probably 20 carries apiece, Auburn's in trouble. They have to just run it down LSU's throat and control the ball. If you can keep that defense off the field, Auburn's going to have a chance to win this game. Tank Bigsby has to show up because last week he was atrocious. That was probably last week the worst game I think I've ever seen Tank Bigsby play. He was horrible, and that goes along with the offensive line. But I don't think LSU's defense is super strong. You saw what UCLA did to it. UCLA just picked them apart, and I think Tank Bigsby's better than Zach Charbonnet at UCLA. He should have a field day this weekend. But the mid-range pass game is atrocious for Auburn. And if Harsin's firing coaches and we give up another, Sean Clifford had 4 incompletions against us 2 weeks ago. If that happens again this week, you might as well send the secondary coach along with the wide receiving coach. Because if anyone deserves to be fired, it's him.
And you've alluded to it, and Ralph and I talked about it briefly. It came out, up until this point for me, Brian Harsin, I mean, he had the mentality of a head coach that you wanted. He had all the intangibles. He brought something, honestly, a breath of fresh air. And really, to me, watching some stuff throughout camp, he brought this sense of kind of visibility that you could see within the program. But then this happens. And what are your thoughts? I mean, obviously, you kind of made them clear a little bit. What are your thoughts on kind of what happened with this firing? obviously the real reasons behind it were probably because there was an off-the-field coach, like you alluded to, that he really wanted on the field, some of those things right there. But, I mean, I feel like it was more of a scapegoat situation, to be honest. I mean, this is something the wide receivers have not been playing well. And I said before you hopped on, is somebody in that room, Demetrius Robertson, Kobe Hudson, somebody. And listen, we love Kobe Hudson. He's a local guy to this area. Someone's got to take a step up and say, whether it's an old or young guy, we got to do better. But this firing of the wide receivers coach, what did that mean to you maybe just beyond the lines?
I mean, beyond the lines, I'm just going to say it looks really bad. I mean, on all issues, and I don't speak politics, but the way it looks politically is even worse just because of, promoting inside the team and promoting it's like the good old boy club all over again. And that's something that SEC's perception has been terrible. And especially because even beyond that, and I've talked to, we cover a lot of SWAC football and things like that on our show. I had someone text me because all my SWAC guys keep up with Auburn now because of me, but they text me, it looks even worse that he fires an African-American coach and promotes a good old boy club inside the program on top of that. That looks that is an atrocious look for Harsin already week 4. And I'm going to ask you, you guys cover football. Is anything that wide receiver coach has done on the field? He hasn't recruited a player. He hasn't coached 4 games. He didn't even coach an SEC game yet. Has he done anything where he should be unemployed right now?
That's true. When you really break it down like that, I mean, he hasn't. I mean, he coached 1 big-time game at Penn State, 2 garbage games, and then the Sun Belt team that was a middle-of-the-road Sun Belt team, to be honest with you. I mean, he hasn't coached a big-time SEC game yet.
Exactly. And on top of that, when I I made a list, for Fly War Eagle, and I'm working on the article now. When you make the list of 1 through however, there's a long list of things that is wrong with Auburn right now. But I wouldn't even put the wide receiving coach in probably the top 5. You can do O-line, you can do coaching, you can do quarterback play, you can do secondary play, you can do pass rush, you could do consistency. I mean, there's so many things that you could have done before firing the wide receiving coach, because for me, I thought the D-line has been atrocious, and you give up 250 yards rushing to Georgia State, and the D-line coach gets to keep his job. There's just so many questionable decisions, and I've heard this narrative that it's a culture building thing. If you're not doing your job, you got to get out of the program now, and he's trying to keep the winners in the program. Well, I can name 5 more people that have to go if we're going to keep execution and winners in the program. For me, like you said, it was a scapegoat. It was a lack of responsibility. And the fact that he hired someone from Boise State in a good old boy fashion was probably one of the worst PR moves that he could have made as the Auburn head coach.
It's definitely interesting. I think that it may not be time to push the panic button on the Plains, but it doesn't get anything easier from here. Like we talked about earlier on Monday, just between Ralph and I, this was a game that you felt like was going to be a win, a time to rest some guys, time to really figure out what you had after a tough emotional game against Penn State. Before you got into the meat of the schedule, well, now you have even more questions you thought you were going to have, and it is going to be interesting. Like I said, the peak for this team right now, best case scenario for me, is 8-4, 2 more losses against Georgia and Alabama, and that's respectable to probably the 2 best teams in the country, and by a far margin. The worst right now is I have no idea. There may be 1 or 2 winnable games in worst case scenario. I think worst case scenario, you don't make a bowl right now with Auburn.
Right now, I don't think Auburn's better than Arkansas. I don't think they're better than A&M. I don't think they're better than Georgia. I don't think they're better than Ole Miss. I don't think they're better than Alabama. I mean, really and truly, if the South Carolina game was this weekend, I wouldn't be super confident right now, to be completely honed with you. I mean, especially with it,
will take care of them. Don't worry.
Hey, and right now, if Auburn was playing Troy, I'd be lying to you guys if I said I wasn't a little bit nervous.
I would. You'll be nervous. Don't worry about it. Okay. You didn't see last week's performance. This is okay.
Oh yeah, that UL Monroe game was tough. That was a bad loss for Troy.
Let's give it left. All right.
But no, listen, Zach, we appreciate it. Obviously, with what you're doing covering Auburn, having a beat on them, what they're doing, coming on the show talking about it. Obviously, you hope it's a better result for when you have to cover on Saturday night. What is your gut feeling? Don't give me a prediction, but if you had to trust your gut right now on what's going to happen on Saturday night, is it good news for Auburn fans, or is it another bad news and maybe darker days ahead?
Man, it's actually funny. I'm actually going to record our preview to drop tomorrow right after this show. But right now, man, I'm really leaning toward it's going to be a tough weekend for Auburn. I mean,
Mm.
I believe in Tank. I believe in Jarquez. It's just Harson's never been afraid to run two quarterbacks out there. And my worry is they're going to let it get too deep in the hole. LSU has such talented wide receivers. I just have a feeling it's going to be a replication of what happened 2 weeks ago. They're going to dink and dunk Auburn to death. And Max Johnson is going to throw for 300 yards, averaging like 3.5 yards per attempt. And there's just going to be no answer for the Auburn defense. I'll give you a prediction. I think right now, if I had to say right this second, I think LSU gets a win this weekend in Death Valley.
And to be a big win, because I think this past weekend there could have maybe been some heads rolling later on in the season. If LSU would not have gotten the win against Mississippi State, they could really turn things around and have a respectable season kicking off their SEC schedule. Zach, we appreciate it as always. Best of luck to you, what you have going on. Obviously, make sure people tune in. The Blue Buds on YouTube. Awesome. They do previews. They're pumping out. You pump out so many previews, Zach, that I have a tough time keeping up with them, but it's great content. We appreciate it as always. Have a fantastic rest of your evening, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate y'all.
That is Zach McKinnell. He had a great time talking with us. And Ralph, I think he hit the nail right on the head with what we were talking about. This is a must-win game for Auburn this weekend because it doesn't get any easier. Well, we make our way from Jordan-Hare, and we have to stop in Columbus for a break, Ralph. We're going to take a break over to Cook's Place. Then we're going to head on to Athens to talk about the Dogs and the Hogs.
Cook's Place began serving our signature hot dogs in 1985 from a cart on Broadway. We still serve the best hot dogs and scrambled dogs in town at the corner of Moon and Miller Road and at the landings. Our friendly staff won't let you leave hungry. Come in and eat to the beat with our 50s jukebox. Cook's Place, fast service, great people, awesome food. What are you waiting for?
Back here in the Crowded Booth Live, we had Zach McKinnell to talk about all things Auburn. If you're watching the live stream, you're an Auburn fan, said, hey, I missed it. Go back, especially if you're on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, head over to the YouTube page so we can get your comments in as well. We've had some comments over on Twitter, although most of them, Ralph, have been just interesting to say the least. I'm not even going to respond to half of them. But listen, we're going to talk a lot about the Dogs and the Hogs. And this, Ralph, was a matchup that we were talking with Palmer Toms on Monday about. We kind of briefly went into it because we wanted to talk about it mostly here. But listen, Sam Pittman, first off, he makes his return to Athens after making his return to Fayetteville. And listen, what a season Arkansas has had. The upset win over then number 15 Texas. The upset win this past weekend over A&M, although I don't necessarily feel like that might have been an upset. Rankings would have told you that. I wouldn't have told you that necessarily. But, Ralph, I mean, when you look at this game between Georgia and Arkansas, you and I were having lunch today at a local establishment, and we were talking about this, not to be named until they become a sponsor of the show. We were talking about it, and you said to me, and listen, Arkansas is physical, man, but if they don't start quickly, I know it's a noon kickoff, but if they don't, it's still going to be packed. It's going to be loud. If they don't start quickly, and Georgia's offense gets rolling, it could get ugly quick because you don't know. We haven't seen, Ralph, if Arkansas's offense is built to play in a shootout style of game. So I want to talk to you about that because it's very physical. They run the ball well. They have an amazing wideout who is going to be maybe all SEC by the end of the season. KJ Jefferson has the ability to throw the ball downfield. It's more of it's not that I don't think they can do it. We just haven't seen them have to do it so far.
Yeah, I mean, this is the Arkansas's biggest test. Auburn's was Penn State. Now we're in Arkansas against Georgia. Georgia had
this is their biggest test until they play Alabama, I guess.
Well, as the first one of the season, really. I mean, obviously, everyone thought Texas was, but they rolled over Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia played Clemson week 1. They realized they had some problems on offense, and their defense was elite. And we knew that from the get-go. But you're playing a lot better team than I think Clemson. Arkansas is, to me, a higher level than Clemson is right now. Sam Pittman's done a great job.
Mm-hmm.
We give all props to Sam Pittman. He has his whole locker room believing they can beat anyone and beat you senseless, honestly.
Yeah. And
behind their quarterback, KJ Jefferson, who is, I believe, the size of Cam Newton almost, and plays just like him. Like I said, though, like at lunch today, if Arkansas can score early and make a big stop early, this is going to be a very close game. Mm-hmm. But if they don't do anything in first drive, Georgia turns around, takes a punt, goes downfield and scores with ease, it could get ugly quick. And that 18.5-point spread is going to look real easy for Georgia. But a few things need to happen for Arkansas this weekend is that they have to win that battle up front. I mean, that D-line, that front seven for Georgia, to me, is the best front seven in college football. Easily, hands down. And I know we don't talk about the secondary. The front seven are the only ones you need to hear about. You got Jordan Davis. It would probably take 3 guys to stop him completely every game, all game.
Mm-hmm.
You got Nolan Smith, who I think said, it's our end zone. We don't let anyone in it. I'm pretty sure I read that on Twitter or Instagram today. So Georgia's front seven, best in football. Arkansas's got to control that, win that battle up front, and make plays. You got to make the big play. I mean, to me, Treylon Burks is one of the best receivers in college football. And he goes underrated because he plays for Arkansas. And no one really knew who he was last year, honestly. He kind of made his name a little bit toward the end of the year, but he's come alive this year. Had 2 huge touchdowns against our Texas A&M last weekend. And I don't know, man. This game is really weird for me. I want to say Georgia can roll out of there easily, but then it's that Saturday kickoff over Georgia at home. It's early. You know, some guys aren't really ready to play yet. They haven't had all day to warm up. They haven't had all day to get excited. But Kirby, as that coach, is like, we're getting excited, you know, last week. As soon as the game was over Saturday, they were ready for this one. So a lot can happen on Saturday in Athens.
A lot can happen, and I think a lot will happen. I think that this is a game where, you know, there hasn't necessarily been a massive knock on Georgia to this point. I mean, they've done what they've needed to do, and as we've learned more and more, I don't think that Clemson win should be any less validated for what Georgia did, because oftentimes you say, well, why did the team spiral? Probably because Georgia just beat offense up all night long, and the offense wasn't as good as we think. But Clemson's defense was as every bit good as we thought it was, and probably more. But what Georgia offensively has to do in this game, Ralph, and it's been something, too, I want to talk about, this has been an identity going back to the Mike Bobo days of Georgia, where it's, gosh, why are we running the ball so much? And Georgia just runs the ball. They're a run-first team. Well, this year they're not. They're not really a run-first team. You know, and this is interesting, too, because the same fans that complained about Georgia not being a run-first team are now saying, oh, no, our running game's not good. Well, no, it is good. You just are seeing more opportunities in the passing game. It's and 2, you're not going to have, like Palmer told us on Monday, you're not going to have a 1,000-yard rusher this year. And that's okay, because there's 5 deep in the running back room who are all going to get carries and be well deserving of them.
But Ralph, when you almost go 6 deep, almost, I feel like.
Yeah, you could. I mean, you could find somebody else throwing. I mean, what's the tight end's name?
Darnell Washington.
No, the other
Bowers.
one. Brock Bowers
can run. Did he have a rushing touchdown on Saturday?
Lad McConkey, let him run the ball. I mean,
this whole team just scares me. I want to say one thing I'm looking at it right now. From the years past, we're seeing probably Georgia average about 260 yards total rushing, I believe, a game. In total, not just one guy, total in team. This year's 177 right now. That's probably the lowest we've seen in a while. Yeah. Now, Arkansas's offense is very just straight up the same. They can throw it. They can run it very well. I do believe Georgia has them beat in the passing game because they have better receivers overall. But don't let the numbers spoil you, okay? Because Arkansas can do just about everything right. And Sam Pittman's, like I said, I've already said, give all props to Sam Pittman. He's that coach who's going to do all those things right. He hounds on perfection. And I think that's what he expects on Saturday. If they're out there and they execute perfectly like they can, I mean, it's a close game, honestly.
Yeah, it is a close game. I don't think if they do the things, I think you would take the 18.5. You'd have to go with Arkansas side. I think Arkansas will make it closer. One thing for me, I was talking about the running game. Georgia's offensive line has steadily gotten better. I think they have the ability. A lot of it, Ralph, is due to the size. They usually average around 330, which is massive on the offensive front. They're down to around 317, 318, average-wise, 320. Still a very big physical offensive line, but what does that mean? They're probably a little more faster. They're probably quicker. I think this is a game where really Georgia, if they want to, can flex their muscles offensively. And really, Ralph, they could show, hey, guys, we're not just we've made the switch, much like Alabama, we're going to talk about a little later on, made with Lane Kiffin at the helm. With Todd Monken, what he wants to do, they can make that switch. Ralph, I know, is in his head making fun of me because I'm talking with my hands along the table right here. But, yeah, I think the offensive line has to take a step up in that aspect. They're getting better. Listen, that Clemson game, like Palmer talked about, Ralph, It was more of a situation where you had a Georgia team that lost Tate Ratledge early on in the game, and they've been trying to figure out the pieces. They have the pieces. It's just, hey, what's the right combination? Which one is going to work? The second thing for me, if I'm an offensive coordinator, I'm a quarterback or a running back especially, and I see a 3-man front in front of me, that you're begging me to run the ball on you, okay?
Right.
Arkansas employs that type of 3-3-5 defense. So what would have to happen in this situation is if Arkansas does bring that man up, what you talked about, Georgia deploying. I mean, walk me through a scenario here, Ralph, of where you have 2 receivers, 2 tight ends set, and you have a running back in the backfield. Arkansas walks their safety up. You have Darnell Washington, Brock Bowers. If you're putting one of those guys, and I'm sorry, I don't care who you have, if you're putting one of those guys one-on-one with the linebacker, they're going to win that matchup. If Georgia can take advantage of that, but what it means is they have to be able to run the ball effectively. If they do that, if Georgia just runs the ball effectively, personally, I don't care what Arkansas does on the offensive side. I don't think the Razorbacks can stop Georgia if Georgia can come into this game, establish the run. If they do that with JT Daniels on the play action, it could be a long day for this Arkansas defense.
There's 2 names for Arkansas on defensively that stick out to me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And one has probably one of my favorite names in football. It's Bumper Pool.
Yes.
Who is their defensive leader. He is a hard-hitting linebacker. He makes plays. He's always on the field. He's always in the tackle. He's going to be the one that really I look forward to. If he can make those covers, like you said, one-on-one with Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington is literally impossible for any player. You had to be
more so Darnell Washington.
But yeah, exactly. But Brock Bowers is a tight end who runs like a wide receiver.
4,
I mean, it's
4,
crazy.
5.
Exactly. So Bumper Pool probably not going to be one of the guys who can cover those, but he will make something happen where they're either in a certain zone or they're switching off, and he's just kind of playing short in case Daniels underthrows that ball. And one is Jalen Canelon, who I think is the best safety in the SEC. And that's just because I think he's done everything right this year. He's a great – he reads the ball very well, reads the quarterback very well. JT Daniels, remember where he is on the field at all times, because if you throw him toward that area, there's a very good chance it's going to be caught by him or deflected by him. Arkansas's defense is good. It's really good. But if you're comparing it to Georgia's defense, it's probably not as good.
Which, in their defense, if you're comparing defenses to Georgia's, everyone's going to fall short right now of what Georgia has defensively.
Well, I think like what Shane Beamer said last week or 2 weeks ago, Georgia's got 15 or 100 something 5 stars on their defense side, which is it's almost true. But like Arkansas is just building guys and having the right scheme and having the right technique on a certain guy, and they're film junkies. I feel like over there, and they know what's going to happen, and that's why I feel like that's what Georgia State did at Auburn last week.
I got to give a shout out real quick. Caleb Norsworthy says hello, Ralph. He's watching over on Twitter. Caleb Norsworthy says hello.
I had to give a shout out to Peyton Yance also, because he was sad he didn't get a shout out at first.
Well, he needs to leave a comment. I mean, that's what we need. If you want a shout out, and if you want $1 from Ralph Leary, go subscribe to Crowded Booth on YouTube. He'll hit you up right there. Listen, to kind of wrap this up, we're going to give our predictions in our week picks that we always release on Fridays and Saturdays. I think it's going to be a good game. I do think, Ralph, Georgia has more weapons than the end to get it done. I'll say this. If Georgia covers that spread, we're talking about a season, and the hype train is only going to continue to go up. If they blow this game out, and let's just say they show Arkansas's a great story, but they just squash the Cinderella hopes, which I'll tell you, Ralph, that's what elite teams do. They do squash the Cinderella hopes. That's what Alabama does to these teams. We're going to talk about Alabama, Ole Miss here in a second. But if Georgia goes out and does that, man, it could be a fun weekend in Athens. It could be a fun rest of the season in Athens as well. We're going to talk Alabama, Ole Miss right after this. But listen, we know we talked about Georgia, but listen, in our hearts, what we love is we love some Section 103. Fantastic sponsor of the show. You get all of your awesome gear right there. St. Days, taking the snap right there. ATL shirt, Waffle House. Listen, it's a great brand to have. It's fantastic. You're going to love it. Your mom's going to love it. Your dad's going to love it. It's ATL inspired. The only place where you can get that right there, Section 103, a fantastic brand that we are excited to partner with. You can go to section103.com. You can use the coupon code Crowded Booth for 10% off your first order. It's fantastic. It's an awesome thing to have, and it's made by a Georgia Tech grad himself, Steven, sitting over there in section 103. So, Ralph, we're going to dive into the last segment of the show right here. Score update for those not watching. Braves 3, Phillies 1. Am I right in saying that?
As of right now, yes.
As of right now. Alabama, Ole Miss. We're going to dive more into this game in our podcast. Well, you should subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on Anchor as well. But I want to bring this up. Lane Kiffin heads back in. I want to address the Michael Wilbon conversations. Listen, Michael Wilbon, he was on PTI. I loved watching that show growing up. It was a fun show. But listen, the comments that he had about Lane Kiffin being, a train wreck or what he had done by his past, that's absolutely ridiculous. Look, all of us have done stuff, Ralph, in our past that we're not proud of. But to be necessarily taken and said, be defined by it years later, this is not something that happened last month or a year ago. This is legitimately 5, 6, 7, 8 years away from what happened. To say Lane Kiffin's going to bring that same philosophy and style. Ed Jenkins, who watches the show, he said, I can't forget about it. I understand, Ed, you're a Vols fan. There's a lot of things you can't forget about. 1999 being one of them when you won the national title. But I'll say this right here. Lane Kiffin's a great coach. The atmosphere in Oxford is exactly what you want it to be heading into this game. You have high flying. You arguably have the Heisman favorite right now through the first 4 weeks of the season, and Matt Corral, who's done nothing but impress. You have a defense that looks different than they did last season. But I'll say this. Ole Miss is not sneaking up on anybody this year. They're not. We knew what they had. They're showcasing that. Ralph, they headed to Tuscaloosa. Bo Wallace you told me today, Bo Wallace and give me the other quarterback's name.
Chad Kelly.
And Chad Kelly, the only two quarterbacks in recent memory to go into Death Valley, and Joe Burrow, I guess, and beat, and Bo Nix technically, and beat this. Didn't Bo Nix beat? No, he beat him in Auburn. Yeah. Anyways, can this happen? Will this happen? Or are those two different questions I got to ask you? Can it? Yes. Will it? I don't know.
Look, there's a few things that people need to realize is that Saban's never lost to an assistant coach.
Mm-hmm.
And the second thing is the first assistant coach he's going to lose to is Lane Kiffin. Now, I don't know if it's going to be this year, but whenever next year or year after that, it can happen. Lane Kiffin is to me a premier coach, an elite coach. He's great recruiting, has one of the best offenses every year. Nick Saban said it best. I learned so much from him when he was there at Alabama, when we took over his offense, his ideas, and it really moved. We moved well with it, and I feel like that's true. Everywhere he's gone, his offense has always been one of the best in the country. To me, he has the Heisman favorite. Matt Corral's been electric all year. He's great on just about everything he can do. He can throw it with the best of them. He has, an absolute arm. Talking about probably one of the best arms we've seen in college football in the past few years. And being accurate with it too, honestly. He can also move. He had 4 rushing touchdowns against Tulane. Now, people say, that's just Tulane. Well, Tulane almost beat Oklahoma, who is a top 5 program apparently in the country. So Ole Miss to do things this weekend and to make something happen, you just got to outscore this team, man. You really got to just blow them out. This is going to be a shootout game. The over-under for this game, Bryce, is 80.
Wow.
That just tells you that they're expecting it to be a high-scoring game. Not to knock Alabama's defense, not to knock Alabama's offense. Both are very good. But Ole Miss's offense could be probably the most at least electric in the SEC. There's so many things happening. They're throwing it deep. They're going to make big plays. And, even the defense is a lot better than it was last year. They got some great things. Chris Patchers, I think is his name, his defense coordinator there. He has been a great job of just putting people in the right spots. I feel like it was wrong with Ole Miss last year. They had not enough depth in the defense line. Linebackers really weren't communicating well. The secondary was just getting burned every play.
Yeah.
So this year, I feel like all the communication's there. They're making the big plays. They've given them a few big plays every once in a while, but they're gonna stop it from happening as often. I feel like this is like I said, this is gonna be a shootout. I don't think this is low scoring. If it's low scoring, then I just need to stop doing the show. I really do, because if it's the spread's 14.5, that seems about right. I feel like what was last year's score like? I don't even remember what last year's score was this game. I'm trying to pull it as quick as I can. It was 63-48.
And probably should have been closer.
It should have been closer. And Matt Corral threw for 365 yards last year in this game. Matt Corral can throw for 500 yards in the game if he needs to. And I feel like they'll throw the ball probably 40 to 50 times easily in this game, if not 60. Get ready for a high-scoring game. That's all.
It's going to be a high-scoring game, I believe. I think the 14.5-point spread. I think that Ole Miss keeps it closer. I think this is a game because I don't think necessarily, and I'm going to say this, and this is probably frowned upon by the Crimson Tide community. Alabama, Nick Saban's always, after a tough game, he's always rebounded, and we've always had games like this where it's like, oh, they're the darling, and what does Nick Saban do? They go out there and crush him. I'm not buying it this year. I think Alabama still wins. But I think that this is a game that shows that Alabama, once again, is not invincible. And what Nick Saban preached throughout the first 3 weeks of the season, Ralph, that included a win against a completely overmatched Miami team that had no business being a top 25 or ranked team in the country, a less than inspiring win against my Mercer Bears, 48-14, and then they played against Florida. The things he was talking about, they happened. And we didn't pay attention to him because, like, oh, that's just Nick Saban, the whole rat poison stuff. No, there are problems with this team. They're very talented. Not many teams, Ralph, can overcome what this team has or what their fallacies may be. Palmer Tom's right there. Let's go, crowded booth. Palmer, do your homework. That was the reason you couldn't come on the show today. I appreciate it, Palmer, but that's fine. We've already talked about the dogs and the hogs. Come on, man. No, but seriously, this Alabama team, I think they're not invincible. I think Ole Miss, offensively, talent-wise, is better to combat that than Florida was. Now, listen, Dan Mullen, as much as he is an aggravating person and just a complete weirdo, he's an offensive mastermind. He does great things. Lane Kiffin is going to get under Nick Saban's skin. Nick Saban's going to throw the hat down. He's going to take the jacket off. Halftime is going to be a come-to-Jesus moment for Alabama. I think they pull it out. Give me an Alabama win by 10 points in this one. I think Crimson Tide pulled it out late. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But it's going to be a fantastic game. There's not a better week in the SEC. You get 12 o'clock, you get Georgia, Arkansas. 3:30, you get to watch, obviously, Alabama, Ole Miss. And then, Ralph, around 6:30, when that game, 7 o'clock, when that game's over, you get a 2-hour little power nap before you got to stay up for 9 p.m. Eastern. LSU against Auburn. Ralph is excited to watch that one as well. But I know it's going to be a game where you're parked in front of the couch all day long. Nobody bother me. We're going to watch this game. It's a ton of fun. College football, you don't get very much in there. Caleb Norsworthy right there. FSU at 3:32. Can't wait. And Palmer, get on your homework. Don't forget Florida, Kentucky. Florida, Kentucky play. That's a game where Kentucky 2 seasons ago snapped a streak where they had lost against Florida. Reminder, Tennessee fans watching Peyton Yountz. Tennessee has not done that. I don't think you can start Tennessee-Florida rivalry. Go ahead.
And Palmer's throwing out the Kentucky game. I want to throw out which one game that I have on upset, and you wanted the lock, Bryce.
This is a new segment called Ralph's Locks. Ralph's Locks of the Week, and it's not his hair; it's his locks.
It's not a lock. It's a one that don't be shocked.
Okay.
Oklahoma at Kansas State. I have Kansas State upsetting them this weekend.
Ooh, okay.
I feel like it's at Kansas State. It's a 3:30 kickoff.
Now, wait, time out. You said Oklahoma State versus Kansas State?
I'm sorry, Oklahoma.
Because I say Baylor's playing at Oklahoma State.
My bad. Oklahoma at Kansas State.
Palmer will call you out. He already put locked. He put a lock. He would have locked emoji.
Hey, thanks, Palmer. Now go back to doing your homework, please.
Yeah, Palmer, we can bring you on, and I can get a tutor in here to help you with some of that homework if you'd like that indeed. But that's fine.
Yeah, Bryce is the tutor.
I'm the tutor. Well, listen, Ralph, I got a minute and 15 seconds because we got to wrap this thing up because we have some exciting news to launch next week. The Crowded Booth, that's the name of our show, is going to reach beyond the annals of Columbus, Georgia, beyond the Chattahoochee Valley. We're going to be spreading out our wings a little bit. We're excited about that. Listen, if you're watching on Twitter, if you want to win $1, we just need to make this a Wednesday night special. Ralph's Wednesday night special. If you want $1, Ralph will Venmo you $1, but you have to subscribe. How about this? Every 50 subscribers. So 150. We need to get to 150 on YouTube. to get to 200. Ralph will Venmo you another $1 for our 200 subscriber. But listen, we've had a fun time. If you're watching on Facebook, we need the community to grow. Facebook, we love you. We need you as well. YouTube, continue growing that. Finally, Ralph, I don't have to talk tomorrow at least. Friday and Saturday, I'll have been live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. It's going to be a ton of fun this weekend. College football's back. It's better than ever. This is the season we wanted, and we're getting it here because next week, Ralph, we're going to talk about it's another exciting season. And also, if you have Peacock, could you send it to this crowdedbooth@gmail.com because Ralph and I'd like to watch the Notre Dame-Cincinnati game, but you can't unless you have a Peacock subscription. But as for the rest of the show, Ralph, you should tell them, as Richard Leary says so well, thanks for tuning in. Say bye, Ralph.
Goodbye, y'all.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on.